Thank you very much for joining the webinar today. This year, RIEGL has really had some really impressive updates to both our hardware and our software, and I'm very excited to present them to you. My name is Bryan. I live in Los Angeles, and I represent RIEGL's operations out in the West Coast of the United States. Before I get started, there's a chat box here in the webinar that you can go ahead and ask any questions, and at the end of the presentation, I'm going to go through them and answer them individually. Also, I'm going to show a couple of different data sets throughout the presentation that you're more than welcome to have. At the end of the presentation, I'll share my phone number and my email address, and you can reach out to me, and everything's already uploaded into a shared cloud link that I can just send over. So, get started. I want to introduce those of you that have not seen the 600i to the VZ-600i. On the front side of the scanner, it has 3 internal cameras and the beam exit window. On the other side of the scanner, you have the 7-inch touchscreen as well as the green button there that you can use to turn the scanner on and off, and you can also start and stop scans with it. On either side of the scanner, you have bays for the batteries, and then below that, there's a quick mounting adapter for easily taking the scanner on and off of a tripod. Scanner's real most highlighted feature is that it scans in about 25 seconds at 6mm resolution with images at the same time. Also, the scanner is capable of registering your data on board in real time. The scanner is IP64, therefore it is splash proof and dust proof. You can use it in the rain or any kind of dusty environments. You get a maximum range of about 3,280 feet, which is about 3/4 of a mile. For those of you that prefer metric, that's about 1 kilometer. The 600i, as well as all of RIEGL's sensors, come with lifetime product support. And we're going to talk about this a lot, and I know it's a very requested feature, but it is a hybrid mobile scanner as well, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about a big update that's come to that feature to the 600i. To lay out the agenda for this webinar, first thing, probably the feature most people are the most excited about is going to be collecting mobile data with a base station and being able to post-process that data with the observation file. Following that, I'm going to discuss some of the HDR image updates to the internal cameras and some new format options to the external Sony camera. The next thing we're going to jump to is panorama images in RiSCAN Pro. There are some new updates to that in the software that I think our users are really going to enjoy. That's going to affect some of the RiPano exports and make them better. You'll be able to capture better images, therefore the RiPanos are going to be even better. And finally, going to wrap up with a little bit of information on the Autodesk ReCap export that's been added to RiSCAN Pro. So, what do you need to capture kinematic data on any of RIEGL's VZI series scanners? Well, you need at least a 600i, a 2000i, or a 400i. The software component works for all of these scanners. You're also going to need the RIEGL antenna. So the 600i pictured here has the RTK antenna on top of it. And then the 400i on the left-hand side has the large RIEGL antenna. I want to go ahead and make a point here. Any user who purchased a 2000i or 400i should already have that large RIEGL antenna because we deliver them as part of the standard system package. Next thing you're going to need is a base station. Most users have their own base stations. RIEGL is not specifically tied to any specific manufacturer for a base station. You can use, whichever you have, as long as it can produce a RiNEX file that you can convert into an observation file. And then last thing you'll need is the Kinematic Data Processing license. For those users that have been using the Kinematic app capturing data with an RTK network, they don't have to do anything else in order to get the base station collection to work. You don't have to purchase anything. It's just an update. It's all included in that licensing package that you've already purchased. So you already have everything that you need, and this is simply just going to be a firmware update to your scanner. So how do you capture kinematic data with a base station? You're simply just going to start off by setting up your base station and starting logging. The next thing you're going to do after the new update on the 600i, there's going to be a new option in the Kinematic app called GNSS post-processing. You're going to make sure that that is enabled. That's going to let you use the Kinematic app with only single GPS instead of RTK float and RTK fixed. And then you're going to hit start and collect data the way you've always done. So in this sort of example, we had the 600i mounted on the back of this pickup truck, and we drove through downtown Winter Garden, probably a 20-minute project that we did, and I'm going to show the data here to you. On the post-processing side, again, it's also very simple. Nothing changes from how you've processed RTK data. The only new thing you're going to do, first, you're going to update the software, make sure you're on the newest version. Then, as part of your OneTouch Processing Wizard workflow, under the Convert Trajectory task, there's going to be an option called GNSS Post-Processing. In that option, you can now import the observation file from the base station, and RiSCAN Pro will convert and refine the trajectory using that. There is no need for external software. You don't need to download anything else or anything like that. It's all within RiSCAN Pro, which makes it very, very easy to use. This is the project that we collected with the base station data while I was in Florida. It was about a 20-minute collect. We drove through downtown Winter Garden, probably anywhere between 0 to 15 miles per hour, stopping at stop signs, and there's traffic and all these things going on. But we did a couple of passes here. So we drove down this street with the scanner in radar mode, and then we drove on the opposite side of the street as well. And then we did a third pass with the scanner in line mode, fixed at 90 degrees perpendicular to all of these buildings. And you can see the data is very good. I'm going to go through in the next couple of slides and break down what we collected, show some cross sections, stuff like that. But just so you can get a quick visual of what we collected. This data set, I believe, contains roughly 1 billion data points. Again, it took about 20 minutes to capture. We had the base station set up maybe a mile or two away from this location. At the end here, and then kind of where this video ends is where I'm going to take the first cross section in the next slide. Right here, we have that same road. The center lane is kind of a turning lane for both opposing traffic lanes. And then I went ahead into the cross section, zoomed in on the curb on the right-hand side, just so you can see the data alignment. It's very good. And then I zoomed in a little bit further so we could see the spread on those data points. And we're getting about plus or minus 5 millimeters on both ends for the data. I also took a horizontal cross section of the Centennial Plaza sign. It's a good way to show how multiple passes align in the kinematic mode. And taking that cross section, we can see that the pass on the right-hand side and the pass on the left-hand side both align, as well as data on either side of the pillar, which is very important for kinematic processing. Next really important feature, really highly requested feature, is going to be HDR for the internal cameras. I want to take a second to talk about how HDR is working on the VZ-600i. The VZ-600i is simply taking multiple images, the same image multiple times, I guess I should say, at different levels of contrast and brightness. Then we are combining those images, combining the different brightnesses and contrasts to get one final image that is more realistic and true to what was actually there at the time of scanning. So this is an example. We have one image taken from the 600i during HDR mode, and you can see it's, well, maybe you can't tell yet, but it is very bright. It looks like the sky is clear and there aren't any clouds, but I captured this data set and it was a very cloudy day. So looking at the next image that was taken, you can start to see that it was actually very cloudy. It's kind of gray outside. So that was the second image taken from the 600i. And then the third image, which is even darker than the last one. And, you know, kind of captures a lot of shadows and things like that. Finally, what the scanner is doing is combining all three of those to get you one much more realistic image where you can see how cloudy the sky is. You can accurately see the shadows in those balconies. You can see the colors on the vegetation there. It's a much clearer image. After the firmware update to the 600i, in the camera settings, there's going to be a new mode called bracketing mode, which is how you turn on and off this feature. And there's two options here. You have a narrow and you have wide, and I've provided two panorama images created using the HDR photos, and you can see kind of the different effects that they have on either scan. So next really important update is going to be the RAW format on the external Sony camera and how it enables a new workflow for some of our users. You'll now have options between compression settings on the VZ-600i. You can see there on the left, you have RAW and JPEG standard, but you can also save JPEG in different compression settings from standard all the way to extra fine. And then you can also choose to save those compression settings along with the RAW image. So you're going to get two copies of your photos. You're going to get a RAW copy and a JPEG in whatever compression setting you have for it. The cool thing that this enables is you can take the RAW image into third-party softwares and make edits to them, and then recompress them as JPEGs and re-import them into RiSCAN Pro, and then colorize based off those images. So it gives you more control over the colorization that you do. It's not required for every project. You can still just capture JPEGs and have RiSCAN Pro colorize those. But for the users that want to have even more control of their photos and they want to make edits to them, fine tune them and make changes, you can go ahead and take advantage of the new feature to do that. Along with those new features, you're also able to now create panoramic images directly in the OneTouch Processing Wizard in RiSCAN Pro. It's all automatic and it's not a manual process. Additionally, once you've created those panorama images, you can colorize your scan positions off the panorama photos instead of just the single images, which was the only option you had before. Now you can use those panos to color the entire scan position as well. Since we're talking about panos and all of these new camera features, I wanted to talk about how that's going to affect RiPano in a very positive way. So for those of you that don't know what RiPano is, it is a data viewer that RIEGL has. It is all local. You produce it directly in RiSCAN Pro. On the lower right-hand side of the slide, there's a small QR code that if you want, you can scan it, and it'll take you to a demo version of RiPano that RIEGL is hosting on our website, and you can check it out for yourself. If the QR code doesn't work for you, you can also just Google RiPano RIEGL, and it'll be the first link that shows up. So with all of the new features and the RAW photos that can now be edited or HDR images, you're going to get much better panoramas from the software, which in turn, since RiPano is using those images to create its views, you're going to get much clearer images from it. I want to take some time here to show a RiPano. This is a data set collected, and you can see RiPano starts by giving you a top view where it shows you the location of every scan position, and then you can simply just click on one of these scan position icons and it'll take you to the point of view of that scan. And I can click around and sort of view. I can also change the view types and view the data view in grayscale. I can also view the data in true color, and it looks quite good. The user can also go in here and take measurements, do a lot of things like that. So it's a very user-friendly piece of software, and I think the image portion of it is going to be very much improved by a lot of these updates. Going back to the PowerPoint, distributing RiPanos to people is also really easy. It's just a file that gets exported from our software. That file can be put on something like a flash drive, or you can host it on a server or something like that. And whoever you give the file to does not have to have licensing. They don't have to download anything. They can simply just open that file and it opens right in their web browser without the need of doing anything. It also opens with a video guide that shows you how to operate RiPano. It's like a quick, 2 or 3 minute video. You can also import your own company logo so that when RiPano opens, your particular company logo shows up. There's really a lot of settings you can kind of play around with in here and mess around with, but if you want to know more about RiPano, you can go ahead and reach out to me. And another really important, really highly requested feature is going to be the direct ReCap export from RiSCAN Pro. Before this, a lot of our users were exporting the E57 and then importing the E57 into ReCap, and there's kind of a little bit of work that goes on in there, and it takes some time, so it's not the most efficient way to do it. So we decided we're going to create a ReCap export directly into RiSCAN Pro. This is going to create the .rcp file and a supporting folder with all of the data inside of it. You're not going to have to import anything into ReCap. You can simply just double click on the link and it'll open. I've included a video of that so you can see the process. It's just like exporting any other data. By the way, this is a simulated fire in San Diego that I'm showing here. The data set is simply just going to click on your scan positions and right-click export. RCP will be an option now on the newer version of RiSCAN Pro. You can export the panos with it, specific coordinate systems where you want to save it, combine the data, etc. Then this is what the output looks like. You have the RCP file, then the support document, and then opening up the RCP file, you're in RCP now, you're in ReCap now, and all of the tools available in ReCap are there for you. You can click into the bubble views. You can see your panoramas for perspectives. I mean, all of the tools that are in ReCap are just now available. So finish the video up here. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, this is my info. If you want to shoot me an email and ask for any of the data sets, whether it's the kinematic data set, the HDR images, or have any questions on those things, some of the raw format options on the Sony camera, any of ReCap stuff you want to look at, please feel free to either call me or send me an email or reach out to RIEGL directly, and anyone can really help you. I have all these data sets already uploaded, so I can just quickly email them out to people. So I'm going to take some time now to answer some of the questions that I got. It looks like there's a few questions I got asked, and while I'm answering them, please feel free to ask any more questions. So one of the questions is the webinar recorded and can that be provided to you? And yes, the webinar will be recorded. It'll be posted on RIEGL's YouTube, so you'll be able to check out all the things that were provided here. The other question is, let me read it real quick. With the ReCap export, do you have an option to do a single unified RCS export as well? Yeah, so when you combine the ReCap export, there will be an option. Let me go back to it. So here on the bottom, there's an option to combine the data, and that'll take the entire data set and just put it into one ReCap file, and it is structured, which is what I did in this export, and that will produce, you know, the ReCap will be able to tell the individual positions from one another and be able to structure it out so you don't have to do an individual export per each position. Someone asked, how do you get the firmware? Just contact RIEGL. Our support team will provide the firmware to you and all of the instructions that you need in order to sort of capture all of that. So yeah, it's a very easy thing to do. So on the 600i, the 600i has a memory card. We'll provide a file for you that you just put on the memory card. You stick the memory card in the scanner and then boot the scanner up, and that'll start the firmware update process automatically. Someone went ahead and left their email here, so I'll go ahead and reach out to you as well. So let me read another one. Someone asked if the kinematic workflow will utilize control points. There is a workflow that we have for setting the kinematic data to control. That's kind of a little bit more in-depth conversation, and I'll send you that workflow, Austin. My colleague Tan is going to work on sort of creating materials to give to our users for aligning the kinematic data to control points, but it is possible, and I'll go ahead and make a note here to make sure that I reach out to you and send you information on how to do that. Someone then asked how to export only some selected positions in the E57 export. So I'm going to go ahead and show that. And then I'll pause the video. So here, instead of selecting all of the positions, you would simply just select the positions that you want to export. And then when this export window comes up, you choose the E57 export, and RiSCAN Pro will only export the selected positions. So you can choose which positions you want to export. You don't have to always do the entire project. Let's say it's 100 scans, you can just export the first 50, first 10, first 12. Doesn't really matter. It's just the positions that you select that the software is going to try to export. Or someone asked me if we're able to remove moving objects from kinematic point clouds. At this time, there is no sort of automatic feature to remove moving objects in RiSCAN Pro, Dennis. You're very familiar with RiSCAN Pro, so you can use all the tools that are in there, but the mark moving objects automatic filter will not work on the kinematic point clouds. So there's various tools to reduce the file size. One of the questions is, can you reduce the resolution for each scan position collected? You can. There's various tools that will, there's various tools in RiSCAN Pro that will decimate the point clouds, that will reduce the amount of points and sort of compress things a little bit. So there are some tools to sort of reduce it a little bit and get eventually a smaller size file. There is no integration with phase 1 cameras on the VZ-600i at the moment. Okay, I'll write that down as well. Someone else asked for the GCP workflow on the Kinematic app, so go ahead and write that down. And there's one more question here. Well, I got 3 more actually. So RIEGL has various resellers in different countries. One of the questions was, how does someone purchase a unit in a different country? RIEGL works with we have various offices worldwide, and then in other countries we have some sort of distributors that can sell a VZ-600i to you, and I'll go ahead and write your name down here, and I can make sure that I get back to you some information. You can also shoot me an email. Let me go back to that slide. You can shoot me an email to and just remind me, and I'll go ahead and send you, let me know what country you're in, and I can send you whatever information you need in order to, get a hold of someone, ask your questions, and make a purchasing decision. Another question was, can you colorize the kinematic point cloud? At the moment, the VZ-600i does not take any images in kinematic mode, so you cannot colorize the kinematic point cloud. It is something that we're working on, but it is not available at this time. So the one question here is the export option on Autodesk ReCap. Can the point cloud be used in Civil 3D? I'm not very familiar with Civil 3D, specifically with what it lets you import, but RiSCAN Pro will export LAS, LAZ, E57s, the RCP file now. There's a lot of export options. We do PTS and different AutoCAD exports as well. If Civil 3D can import those file types, then I have no doubt that it would work as well. Dennis, let me see. Will the video for individual SP work with kinematic point clouds? So the video fly through that I showed, Dennis, you can do that with any point cloud in RiSCAN Pro. It's very easy to define sort of a path that the camera is going to follow. If you're talking about RiPano can export static scan positions, but we'll have to do some there are some plans to get the kinematic data into RiPano. One of the questions here, I'm sorry, is will it be possible to export to off-plan or I don't know how to pronounce that, Scalpso is what I'm going to say. Like I said, again, there are a lot of sort of standard point cloud formats that RiSCAN Pro can export in. We can do E57s and LASs, and etc. If whatever software you're regarding can import those file types, then again, I think it'll work. We can send you, various exports ourselves, and you can try them out. So we can send you data, and I can send you data, any data you really need in order to get that to work. One of the questions was, can you export a .rcp file without the point cloud in the viewer? That's a great question. That's something that I don't believe is possible based on the options that are in the export window for ReCap. It doesn't look like it lets you export just the images, or just the images when you export the ReCap file. However, you can export the panos or any images by themselves in RiSCAN Pro. You can just export panos, for example, and you can import those into ReCap and do it. It's probably not going to be as automatic as doing the .rcp export directly. There's also the support file that gives you all of that information, and it's possible to make changes to that file and maybe get rid of all the scan data so all that you have is the images. One of the questions is, in the kinematic workflow, is it necessary to first create a static scan and then a kinematic acquisition at the end? Need a starting static and an ending static at the same location. So for the kinematic workflow, we do recommend that you take a 25-second scan at the beginning of your project and at the end of your project. With that being said, that first static scan and that last static scan do not have to be in the same location. You can do like a one-way street, start on one end, drive however many miles, and then finish on the other end without having to drive back. So there's no need to start and stop in the same location. You can just do that, and then doing the static scans again is really fast. It takes 25 seconds, so it's very easy to do. So one question is, why are only the terrestrial scanners have the capability for mobile scanning and not the aerial scanners? Um, well, we do have mobile scanners and we also have terrestrial scanners. The terrestrial scanners are not, the kinematic mode on the terrestrial scanners is not meant to replace our full-blown mobile scanners. There obviously are some limitations to the terrestrial kinematic app that the mobile scanning that you would need to invest in a mobile scanner in order to do. For the aerial sensors, we do have VUX heads that I know some users that have taken the VUX heads that we put on, that we traditionally put on drones, for example, and they've integrated those themselves onto vehicles. But that is a kind of custom integration that our customers have done. We allow you to do that. We provide you all the information that you need to create custom integrations like that, but you have to kind of, sort of do it yourself. One question is also that I had here, what base stations are compatible? There are no, we're not tied to a specific manufacturer for base stations. You can use really anyone as long as it produces a RINEX file that you can then convert using the RINEX converter into an observation file. Another one is, can you increase the number of images used to create panos? You can increase the number of images that the scanner takes, which in turn increases the number of images used to create the panorama. On the scanner, it's called an overlap percentage, and you can raise that value. And then let's say by default, the scanner takes 6 images. If you raise it to that, and that's by default, I believe 20% overlap. You raise that to 40, then the scanner would take 12 images, therefore creating a pano with more images in it. One question was, does the VZ-600i need to be vehicle mounted in mobile mode? The VZ-600i does not have to be mounted to only a vehicle. We've had some examples of users creating a backpack and putting the scanner on a backpack. We've had some examples of people mounting it to a bicycle. It doesn't really care what mobile platform it's on. I've even done demonstrations of the VZ-600i where I just start it in mobile mode and I just pick up the tripod and walk with it. So it doesn't really care what you have it on, kind of what it's moving. The real limitation on the 600i's mobile mode is going to be the speed in which you're moving. You're going to want to make sure you're going as fast as, let's say, 15 to 20 miles per hour. Can the new mobile mapping feature deal with GPS shortages, such as going under a bridge? That's a great question. Yes, we've done some testing. The 600i, we were taking it under a tunnel, and it's fine. In particular, it's even better with the base station post processing. Since the base station is always collecting, when you go under a tunnel, you're still able to maintain really high accuracy. So for something like a bridge or a tunnel where you go in but you eventually come out, it works fine. You can't stay under a tunnel for, let's say, like 40 minutes, right? Eventually the accuracy is going to begin to drop. But if you're driving under a bridge or under a tunnel and you're there for a fairly short amount of time, the scanner can definitely deal with that situation. Should you log the base at 1 second interval? Yes, we recommend logging at 1 hertz, 1 second interval for the base station. Do we have plans to create SLAM to be used indoors? That will be a question that I cannot answer. If I missed anything, thank you for all of the questions. Please feel free to ask more. I don't want to make sure I don't miss anyone. So control, and I want to make sure I follow up with you guys. Control slides. Again, the entire webinar is going to be posted on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to see it afterwards as well. And if you need any data, please feel free to reach out to me. So the question is, if mounted on if the VZ-600i is mounted on a boat for shoreline survey, is it recommended? Is there a recommended vessel speed? Pretty much across the board, you're not going to want to go any faster than 15 to 20 miles per hour. I do have a data set I can show you of the scanner on a boat scanning some shoreline, so you'll be able to take a look at that. I can send you this data set later if you want to reach out to me as well, but I can show you the data set real quick. This is a great example of the VZ-600i in mobile mode, mounted on a boat. They're just driving the shoreline. I did not collect this data set. My colleague Tan did, but nevertheless, it's a great example of the capabilities, the flexibility, the versatility of the scanner. So this is the boat where the scanner was mounted on, and we kind of drove this shoreline here under this bridge. The kind of goal here for the customer is to capture this gear mechanism underneath the bridge. And you can see it did a very good job. Data is very dense. Everything's registered very well. It's all very accurate. And yeah, we did this entire shoreline. This is the St. Mary's Bridge. This is on the border of Florida and Georgia in the United States. Does multiple runs improve the point cloud accuracy? Doing more runs is going to definitely improve your point cloud density. However, we're getting more dense data is also part of the software algorithm and how it's kind of refining this trajectory. It is looking at overlapping data, so you do want to at least get 2 passes on something in order to get the most out of it. It will still work with just 1 pass, right? But you have nothing to kind of compare overlap and just double check. So with that example that I showed you in the PowerPoint, we did 3 passes with the scanner. So one of the questions is, does placing the scanner on a vehicle require any isolations to prevent damage? I'm not sure what you mean by isolations. If you could sort of elaborate a little bit on what you mean by isolations, but what I think you're saying is you have to kind of put, dampeners and stuff like that on the vehicle. I've seen a lot of different sort of mounting solutions for it. The one that RIEGL sells does have dampeners on it. It's a great question. It really depends on the environment, right, that you're scanning in. And if you're going super off-road and it's very bumpy, then I would probably invest in something like that to make sure that but as far as like bumpiness and swaying and stuff like that, it's not going to impact the data. Like I said, a lot of the times when I demonstrate the Kinematic app, I don't put it on a car or anything. I just like take the tripod and pick it up and put the tripod on my shoulder and walk with the scanner, and the data is really good. So you don't need to like keep it level the whole time or anything like that. You can just go ahead and scan, and it'll still register the data. It's very good. The IMU inside the scanner is very good for compensating for all of that. That's why the scanner is such a popular choice for putting it on something like a boat, especially where the water is moving and your boat's not going to be perfectly level the whole time. The data is still going to come out exceptional. Thank you everyone for joining. Again, I'm going to put my information up here one more time. If anyone needs anything, if you have any questions, please feel free you can text that number, you can call that number, you can shoot me an email, and I'll be more than happy to send you anything I can and give you any information. If you're someone from another country and you're not purchasing through the United States, I'm very familiar with the whole RIEGL team worldwide, and I can put you in touch with whoever you may need to get in touch with. Again, thank you very much for attending. If you'd like to see the webinar again, keep a lookout on our YouTube channel for it. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast now, but thank you very much.